Welcome to the Mind Body Wellness Podcast, where we have insightful conversations on all things holistic health and mental wellness. I'm your host, Annika Taylor. I'm a holistic health practitioner and somatic coach, and I believe that the key to healing already lies within you. Together with nature's medicines, we have everything we need to live our most authentic, expansive, coziest, and dreamiest life possible. Let's get nourished. Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited and honored to get to introduce one of my teachers and my somatic and parts work mentor. Her name is Kimberly Erickson. She'll be joining us today, and she's a holistic trauma coach and speaker, and she empowers individuals to heal from trauma, rewrite their stories using somatic awareness and parts work. With personal experience in adoption, developmental trauma, attachment trauma, burnout, and stress, she brings empathy and expertise to her coaching practice, which is called Growing Harmony Within. Kimberly is a biology of trauma mastery professional, an advanced level somatic experiencing practitioner, and has completed training in somatic attachment therapy, somatic parts work, internal family systems, and neuroaffective touch. Through one-on-one and group coaching, she guides clients on their healing journeys with powerful trauma-informed tools and techniques. And so with that, thank you so much for joining us today, Kimberly.
It's really great to be here with you today. I'm excited to explore some of these topics with you.
I am so excited. This is just one of those topics that it has changed my life so much in my own trauma healing journey. And really the fact that I got to experience this and learn this through the program that I was doing, Dr. Amy Apigian's program. And you are one of my mentors, and it's just so exciting to get to actually talk about this subject with you. And I know there's a lot of people who will never have heard of parts work before. And so we're going to break it all down and just explain how this is something that, truly every single human would benefit from understanding and working with their different parts, because it's something that, scientifically, we do all have these other parts. Someone will say, oh, a part of me really wants to take this new job and quit my corporate job and live my dream. But then another part of me is terrified. And so we're really going to explore that today of there's a reason that you're saying that and feeling that, right? I'm so excited. And with that, if you don't mind, maybe let's just kick us off and walk us through what is parts work.
Yeah. And internal family systems, IFS, sometimes you'll hear it referenced that way, was developed by Dick Schwartz, and really out of his experience and working with people, and that people who would come to see him as a therapist, he's a therapist, and would just naturally start talking about parts of themselves, just like you were just saying. These a part of me, this or that. And so he started to come up with a whole methodology of working with parts and kind of documenting this and putting it together. And it wasn't that only people who have a pathology or something were showing up this way. It was like everyone was resonating with this. And Dick himself was like, oh, well, I have parts,
right?
This is a normal thing to have parts. And so that's a little bit of that history, I think, just in how it came into being as a methodology in a way. Yeah. And then I think there's just so many ways we can notice parts. Like you were just saying, a part of me wants one thing and a part of me maybe wants another thing. And then we can notice maybe parts through feelings that we have, our emotions. Like we might have a part of us that feels sad, and be able to also recognize maybe there's a part that's excited about something else in life. Right. And that we can hold there's kind of two different emotions that are showing up right now. Or it might be just the thoughts that we're having. That's a little bit more like you were saying to start with. It's just all of these different ways we can explore parts and get to know them more. And so on one level, we have kind of parts that have taken on these roles, like a protective role, and they're there trying to protect in some way. And then we have parts that maybe are, in IFS, we call them wounded or exiled parts that we're trying to maybe not feel like we don't really want to feel maybe what that part's feeling. Um, and so those parts are often burdened in some way, like there's something kind of weighing them down. And we might get to that place where like, I don't want to feel that. And our protective parts are often in that role of like, oh, how do I either not feel that, or how do I make sure that part doesn't get triggered, doesn't get activated?
Okay. Right.
Yeah. And so when you talk about like, say, a perfectionist part, that part is protective and is trying to protect usually a part that was wounded at some point by not being good enough. And so that perfectionist part will probably keep coming in saying, this has to be just right. We have to do this perfectly. And all of that coming back to, if we don't, something bad is going to happen. Like this wounded part of us is going to feel that hurt again. And that will probably be unbearable.
Kimberly, as you're saying it, I got goosebumps just because it's so resonating with me, as I'm very perfectionistic. And until I started working with, those different parts of me underneath, well, at the subconscious root, I suppose you could say, it was really, eye-opening, gave me so much compassion, was like, no, I'm not just stuck this way. There's a reason and a purpose behind this always. And it's so beautiful and just really gives you so much compassion for yourself and for other people, because now I spot it in other people and I have compassion for them too, to see, oh wow, that's what's going on. And it's their beautiful nervous system saying, hey, we have to step in, because if we don't, in the example of perfectionism, something really bad could happen. And those parts really truly believe that, like, you could die, you could be, completely cast out from the community. And sometimes they're very extreme, dramatic beliefs in there, right?
Yeah. And I think, there can be this survival element to it that you're alluding to. Like, I don't know if I will get through this.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us to, like, a lot of times these parts are young, meaning their feelings are very young. They're coming from a point in time where something happened when we were young and didn't have the resources to really deal with that. And that's why it became a survival feeling inside. And, we can grow up and become adults, and it can be decades later, and still that part of us is stuck back when we were 5, and when, our artwork wasn't good enough and we felt shame in that moment. And then kind of came to this belief that I have to make sure this never happens again. I never want to feel this again, or I might not survive.
I'd love if you wouldn't mind talking us through, like, what got you interested in this? I'm always so curious, just personally. I love to hear people's stories behind what got them into this work.
Yeah. I think my first information about IFS came through reading The Body Keeps the Score. So that was, this sort of like just a handful of pages of like, oh, here's one way that is helpful in working through things that we're holding. And The Body Keeps the Score is a book by Bessel van der Kolk that was really like meaningful to me as I started doing kind of a trauma healing journey myself, of like, oh, the body is holding all of this. So there were a few pages in there that just gave me a little piece of information along with a bunch of other things. But beyond that, going into therapy and doing some therapy for myself, probably 5 or 6 years ago, there was a day when I emailed my therapist and I was like, I don't understand. I feel like I'm just arguing with myself. And she replied with, this might help. And she sent me this graphic from IFS parts work. And, like, maybe this will resonate for you. And so I saw that and I started reading about it, and I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Now I can kind of come to understand why I feel pulled in different directions inside. that really, like, I have these different parts. And from that point, I was like, I need to learn everything I can about parts work. And this is really helping me come to understand how I think inside, what's going on inside of me. And yes, I really do argue with myself. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I think that, yeah, I think that for me, understanding like how to work with myself and when those parts come up, like the way I explain it is the way that you taught me, really, which was you can imagine that there's a bus and we're driving, you're driving through life and you ought to really be cruising, and you're the adult present person, the age that you are today, and you're driving, and you can, stop off at the beach or take the bus wherever you want to go. But then you imagine there's the younger parts of yourself and they're also on the bus. And sometimes that 5-year-old part, like you mentioned, might see, oh my goodness, I see a fire truck outside. That reminds me of something that happened when I was younger and it was really scary. So now I'm going to jump up and I'm going to slam the brakes on the bus and I'm going to start driving. And it literally is like those younger parts are driving the bus, because when you get triggered and that part, that program, that subconscious part of you comes back online and it's like, oh my gosh, this feels so familiar. I know this feeling, when my partner looks at me that way, or when a family member, says a certain phrase, I recognize it. And your mind is so smart and so clever. And so that comes online. And so now here we are, our 5-year-old is driving this giant bus, and it's not really ideal, I guess is the word. I'm trying to think of a nice word. It's not ideal. And so working with that 5-year-old, hey, and the questions are so simple. Like, hey, what are you protecting me from? How can I be here and attune with you? It's really just like attuning to, I think of it as like holding a crying baby, right?
Oh, yeah. And I think these pieces of like, what are you afraid is going to happen? And often those parts that do that come up and start driving the bus, like taking control of where we're going in life, are in this place of, I need to be in control. And I have felt alone. Because often there's an aloneness in that reaction because no one helped us in the way that we needed. Not that there wasn't anyone around when things happened, but they didn't help us in the way that we needed to be helped.
Right.
So we had to step into, it's either, taking control. A lot of those protective parts might do that. Or maybe it's withdrawing. Maybe it's pulling away, which is still a form of control. But, there's just all of these different ways that might show up.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful to kind of name some of those, because I'm thinking for people listening, they might be thinking, how would that show up in my life? And just naming a couple of scenarios like that, I think is really helpful. Are there any other signs that you can think of a person's protective parts maybe coming up and showing up in just normal day to day?
Yeah, I think a fascinating way you can start to notice is maybe noticing tension in your body.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because, I feel like a lot of people resonate with like, oh, my shoulders get tense, or, oh, I always have problems with my neck, or my back, or these different places where we have tension. And it can be so interesting to start to track when those are showing up and when they relax back. And I know for me, I have parts of me that I recognize like, oh, that part is active because I'm feeling the tension in my shoulders, for instance. So that can be an interesting way to notice our body, and that there's a part, and you might not have known that before, just through like a tension pattern.
That is so interesting. Actually, I definitely have noticed that in my own body. And when you say the shoulders, like, yes. And oftentimes it's a specific thing that always comes up is like, when I'm worried about work, I will feel it in the shoulders. Or when I'm stressed, I will feel it in my stomach. And then that's a way that I use, and for myself and my clients, like to connect and just kind of somatically dropping into the body and just noticing like, well, we're connecting with this part of us that's feeling scared and alone. And where are you noticing that in your body? And my clients are so smart. They know their body so well. And instantly they'll say, I'm feeling it here in my stomach, or I'm feeling it in my heart space. And so, and I kind of walking them through that, I'll just say, yeah, let's connect and let's maybe place a hand over that area. And a lot of times the tension, if there's like tension in your chest or tension in the shoulders, it will start to relax because you're really connecting with that part. And I think that's something that maybe I'd like to talk a little bit about is like when we're connecting with those parts of us, what's a simple way to start doing that? Like if you wanted to just sit down and just kind of connect with our parts, maybe do you start like with the one that's showing up the most dominant?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key things you want to keep in mind when you want to connect with parts.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key things is, kind of like what is your attitude toward the parts as you're coming into this connection?
Mm.
And like, if we come into that with an agenda of, I want to get to know you so I can fix you. So I can figure out why you do what you do and make you not do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? If we come in that way, parts are usually like, yeah, I hear agendas right away and I don't want to talk to you. And so really noticing, can I come without an agenda? Can I just be curious and come get to know you just where you're at? And even saying those words like, I don't need you to change, and really meaning it, we kind of need to get to that place.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's important to notice that when we go talk to a part, sometimes other parts are going to pop in.
Mm-hmm.
And we can tell that another part's coming in when we don't feel that curiosity or presence or calmness. So if we go to connect with a part, maybe it's right that part in the belly that's like maybe churning a little bit, and we're like, oh, I want to get to know you a little bit better, and what are you afraid of? And if you hear something back, if another part comes in and starts saying, oh, I hate that feeling, I just hate that feeling, that's another part. If that thought comes in, and you can know that it's like, okay, there's another part, and you pause. That would be my invitation, to pause in that moment, because then you have a choice. Are you going to spend time with this other part, stay with the same part? It's important to always acknowledge parts. So you might just, oh, yeah, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't like this part. You hate that feeling. Can we hang out with this other part for a while and maybe just get curious about why that feeling happens? So that's just a kind of a simple example, if that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. For me, that's been the most healing thing, to just say, I believe you to a part. Like, I'm not going to tell you that's dumb and that you're an adult now, you're 32, goodness sakes. Like, I'm just going to say, hey, I believe you. And that really, I notice, really, really helps to calm me down, because like you said, these parts of us they feel so alone. They've been so alone for so long. And it kind of feels like finally someone's listening to me. Okay, well then I'm actually not going to have to worry about this. And so, yeah, I love that you brought that up, because it's very, very real. I think also, since you mentioned self, would you mind explaining, since we're talking about all the parts of us, I think it's important to highlight too, is there a part of us that's just like, for lack of a better phrase, the real us?
Yeah. And so, IFS has this concept of the true self. Sometimes I will call it like our healing self.
I like that.
I hate to say part, because it's not a part.
Right.
But then there's this, way of describing, it's really the whole of who we are.
Oh,
this,
okay.
this true self, this healing self. It's there. everyone has a true self.
Yeah.
And again, this was something that Dick Schwartz found in his research and his working with clients, where everyone underneath parts had a true self. And this true self was capable of being compassionate and finding curiosity and having a centeredness. And there's these 8 C's that are part of IFS. But they're like this wholeness, this sense of wholeness that is underneath. And that, again, was another thing that was really profound for me. It also is described as this I mean, again, I want to say part of us, but this true self that isn't damaged. And like, it's not possible to have that be damaged, because we can think of all of these parts and these experiences, and we might come up with, oh, I'm broken in some way. Things happened to us when we were so little, right? We can have that sense. And yet here is this model that comes, and it's like, no, there is a true self under all of this that has never been damaged. That is always there. And I just find that so profound to be able to bring that. You might not feel it right now, but it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. I mean, that actually brought up a lot of emotion for me, because I think for those of us who are wanting to heal trauma, or who are on our trauma healing journey, having someone say that there's your true self and that's never been damaged. That's crazy, because we always think, oh, if I've had trauma, then I'm pretty much just like, I'm just pieces of my former self. And having someone be able to say, actually, here's what's up. It's so healing just even to hear that and know that this work is like essential, and it doesn't have to be hard, right? It does not have to be overwhelming. I think sometimes, well, I'll use myself as an example. When I first started learning parts work, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm already I'm having a hard enough time just like regulating myself. Now I have to be responsible and regulate all these other younger parts of me, was my honest how I felt. But the truth is like, no, like that's not true, right? You can start just very small, can't you, Kimberly?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can start small. We can just start noticing that a part of us is showing up. And that can be so powerful, because often it feels like all of who we are.
Yeah.
We might say like, oh, I am so angry in this moment. And if we can step back and say, oh, there's a part of me that's angry. It's not all of me. And it leaves space for other parts to be there. And that can also be super helpful in our relationships if we're approaching someone, where we can say, a part of me is really angry with you.
Yeah.
Because again, that lands for another person in the space of, oh, not all of you. This is not all of how you feel. So it can impact relationships if we're able to come from that place of a part of me, but just even for ourselves to start acknowledging, oh, that's not who I am. I am not anger, or I am not shame or collapse or whatever it is. That's just a part, and then it leaves space that I might feel different in just a little bit later.
Yeah. I think it's so, so good. There's some languages too. I don't remember which language specifically, that when they say emotions, it's like, I'm having anger or I'm having sadness. It's not like I am angry or I am sad. And I think that that's really, really beneficial to be able to step away and say, yeah, sorry, that was a part of me that definitely got triggered. There's so many reasons that we might feel like we have limiting beliefs or we're self-sabotaging. Are we actually self-sabotaging, Kimberly?
Mm-hmm. Again, that's protective. That is so protective, because when that's happening, there's a part that's like, if we do this new thing, there's danger in some way. And so it can feel like a self-sabotaging, right, thing. And we might see that pattern, but when we get to know the part, that part is trying to help.
Mm.
And again, often they're young and have had some experience that says, this is too dangerous. There's way too much risk. I'm going to end up and fill in the blank, right? Embarrassed, shamed, failing, something. And so that part holds us back and says, no, don't do it. It's not worth it, is generally their sense of the situation. And again, they're often young.
Yeah. They are often very young. And I've found, and I'm curious your opinion on this, but for me, when I'm working with myself, sometimes there are younger parts of me that I just know if I hear the age, I will go into story. I will go into that trauma story. And I don't want to re-traumatize myself. So what I'll do sometimes is I will imagine that younger part as like a baby animal, something really neutral and something really easy for me to connect with. And I find that and sometimes, people will use like characters from a movie or a book. But for me, the baby animal thing works so great. So like if I'm connecting with a part and I'm noticing, I'm feeling that in my chest, I might just say, hey, like, what does that feel like? Is it a baby fox or a baby owl? And I know it kind of sounds funny, but for me, it actually works really well. And I find for those clients who have had a lot of trauma in childhood, it's actually really feels safe and neutral and easy to connect. If you kind of imagine it, it's just like, hey, I'm just caring for a little innocent baby animal.
I mean, symbology is huge in whatever way that we're able to bring it in, or that a client can connect to in some way, whether it's animals or just imagery of some sort. Going into like, oh, what are you feeling in your body, and is there a symbol? Is there an image? And I mean, I've had clients who notice things in their stomach. And then when we go into the imagery, without going into story, it becomes this black hole. And pretty soon it's got teeth. And, just all of this imagery that's coming without story, right? And then often it transforms as we spend time with it and shifts into an entirely different image. And so it really can be so powerful to use that imagery or symbology and not be in story at all. But no, there's something there, right? We know every part has a story. That moment when it's decided, like, I'm never going to let this happen again in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I just think I love how you're talking about the symbology. It's so true. And we can learn about a lot about the parts and about ourselves with that. And yeah, just the benefits of doing that without going into stories. Like it's not like a therapy session where it's like, okay, well, tell me about your trauma from childhood. No, we're working safely and gently, and we go slow. And that's the benefit of working with someone like you. And I'm going to get all of your information at the end so my audience can work with you. But that's the benefit of working with someone. It's just like a guide. It's literally just having a guide. And once you learn how to do it, yes, you can do that at home too. But it's always so wonderful to have someone to walk you through it. Because sometimes you're like, I don't even know where to start. I know I have this, it could be that you feel like there's a limiting belief or a block in your life that's just holding you back. You want to be your creative self. You want to move forward. You want to start a relationship, whatever it is that feels like it's just too much. Sometimes I would say that's one of the best times to work with someone doing parts work. Are there other times in someone's life that you feel like would be a good place to start doing parts work?
I think if you start to notice that you have reactions in life to situations that seem like young, sometimes we just feel that, and afterwards we're like, what was that all about? I felt like I was 5
Totally
in my response, and I don't get it. That's not who I am. I'm not like, I wouldn't normally react in that way.
Yes.
So when we find moments like those, they can be really important because, that part is kind of hanging out and coming to the surface in moments that sometimes maybe affect our life in a way we don't like. But that's one thing that I think of. And often those happen in relationships. It might be triggered by our family of origin in some way, like we go back and visit at home, or just whatever relationships often. But it can pop up like at work, so that can be that's one thing I think of. Maybe anywhere that we start to feel like guilt and shame around things. Often that is, a part of us that has something that they're holding.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, there is guilt that is healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of times, though, we're experiencing guilt, and maybe not a very healthy way. And that's often a part that's carrying something that maybe they've carried for a long time and they don't need to carry anymore.
And so kind of as we're talking about that, I wonder, do you have it's going to be so hard to pick, but maybe do you have one story where you're either doing parts work with yourself, with a client, of course, keeping it anonymous, but is there anything that sticks out to you where you were working with someone and they just had a breakthrough? I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah, I met with someone recently, and I got to practice my new somatic things a little bit, of starting with this sense of like, oh, when was the last time you felt more like you want to feel? That's something that we practiced in this last training I was in. I'm like, I'm going to do this, even though this is about parts work, and I was a little worried this might happen, but the person I was working with was immediately like, there's nothing, I don't leave my house. I don't go out. Just in this place where nothing feels good.
Yeah.
But we were able to kind of notice nature and bring in some nature. And it was so cool how that wove through the whole session of coming back to kind of young parts who weren't cared for in the way that they needed to be cared for. And then there was some shame around that, some shame around having their own children and not caring in the way that they had wanted to. And we were able to keep coming back to nature as sort of a titration to like the nurturing that they would see in nature as a resource. And in the end, being able to really connect all of that into like, oh, those young parts of you, they deserve that same care that you see in nature. That's what they deserve to have had that they didn't get. I don't know. It was just this beautiful tying together of the somatic pieces and then the parts, and some degree of healing just in one session, and being able to stay connected with that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I just love the way that you painted that. We titrated. And that means, we didn't stay with one thing too long to where it pushed you out of your window of tolerance. And that's what you would always teach me in the classes is, we want to keep things manageable. If it's unmanageable, you're going out of your window of tolerance, you could re-traumatize yourself. That's not why we're here. And so this work I love because for those of us who have maybe felt really pushed and, we've gone through a lot of trauma. We're sensitive. There's so much that comes up so fast when we're in therapy. I love this work because through somatic experiencing and through parts work, like you said, there's no agenda. We're here to befriend. We're here to attune. We're here to connect. And you're right when you said it was just one session, but so much healing. And I've seen that with myself. I've seen that with my clients. Sometimes it's like, that was so simple. How could that have been so big and made such an impact? And I think that's the point. It doesn't need to be complicated at all. And so I think, in closing, would you mind I know we touched on this, but would you mind mentioning for listeners who are interested in parts work, what's a gentle first step maybe today that they could just integrate into their day?
So going back to that, just noticing that a part is showing up, that this is a part of you and not all of who you are. When we already talked about that a little bit. So starting to notice that and just kind of tracking it. And again, you might track it through tension in the body, or maybe it's thoughts, or maybe a feeling. Acknowledge that. So kind of pause and acknowledge, like, oh, that's a part of me. It's here right now. Um, if you're comfortable with a touching, like a hand over the heart, or maybe a hand over the belly, or even touching the shoulders, or the jaw can be a place we hold a lot of things. If you're comfortable touching as a way to acknowledge, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to be touch. Um, but finding a way to just kind of say, like, oh, I see you. You're here. And another level would be that befriending that you were just talking about, and that we teach in this program also, but a befriending of coming alongside, like, oh, I do want to get to know you. I'm super curious why that thing that just happened really, made you scared or mad or really sad, whatever it might be. Like, bringing in that curiosity. It takes courage to do this work. We want to be confident as we come alongside the parts. And that not having an agenda. I'm not here to get to know you to make anything in particular happen. I just sincerely want to get to know you. And that starts to build trust between our true self and these parts. So building trust is a big piece of that. Yeah.
Would you mind sharing how can people find you and how can people work with you?
Yeah, so I have a website, growingharmonywithin.com. And so if you go to my website, there's an interest form that you can fill out if you'd like to work with me. And if you fill that out, then I will send you a link to book just a free 20-minute pre-consult, where you just have a chance to kind of sort out, would you want to do more with me or not? So that's just your opportunity. So free, you can have a 20-minute session where it's not really a session. It's more of a Q&A and a get to know each other.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So that's right on my website. Plus you can see the other things that I have going on there.
I love it. I'm going to put those in the show notes so that people can reach you there. And that's easy to find you. Yeah, I love that so much. And you guys, just because I have worked with Kimberly and I know her heart, and she is one of the most beautiful souls on earth. I highly recommend parts work for everyone personally, because it's so great. But I would definitely recommend working with Kimberly because she's just so gentle and will not overwhelm you at all. And it will just be such a wonderful experience. So thank you again, Kimberly, for coming on. And yeah, I'm so grateful that we got to have this conversation. And I just hope you have the most wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you so much.